Hello, everybody. Welcome to my project discussion, the final thing for this class besides the paper, whatever, doesn't matter. Um, for mine, I looked deep into my heart to see what I thought would be the best thing for me, and I figured out that the best thing for me would be sports and activities, since I have been playing sports my whole life, been doing activities, and I thought that would probably be the best thing to research for Vikings, even though I knew literally nothing about the Vikings. I've gone over that multiple times, how little I've known, and this is another example of me knowing a little. So I started looking into games, things like that, because I knew a little bit about, because we learned in Gisela's Saga that they had that one weird tackling kind of rugby-ish weird game. I don't know, but that did bring me a lot of insight actually that we'll see later. But overall, it all worked together, and I figured out a lot of good stuff about what Vikings do or did in their free time, which was a fun thing to learn about because it really has a funny end to it. Like you don't really think about it, but it's got a funny. My thesis that I'll say is kind of it's funny for the Vikings. So in my research, the first thing I did is I found a really great website that outlined almost everything they did. There was it was probably 20 pages long, and it had so much stuff. So that was really good. And then so I was able to find all the stuff, and it led me to a bunch of great sites, and led me to a bunch of sagas actually that had games and activities in them. That was great. And then I kept digging more and more, and I found some great archaeological stuff that they found, and that led me to different other games and stuff. And overall, it really showed me a lot of cool things. And the biggest thing I took away, the thesis of my whole research, is that Viking games are pretty similar to what we play today, and they're a lot more tame and laid back than we usually consider the Vikings, because the Vikings we think of pillaging and killing people, but in their free time, they really like to take things back and relax instead of, doing a lot of this crazy outward stuff that we associate with the Vikings more often. So the first game that I saw, first thing that really drew my attention were drinking games because of course we watched in the movie The Vikings that they love their drinking games. The ones they played in that movie, not so real. The real ones, like I did in my modern interpretation, were a lot more intricate and intelligent than I thought. They would actually play drinking games where they would do poetry battles, poetry slams practically. And if you were to defeat another person in this poetry battle that you have, the other person would drink. And usually everybody would drink anyways, so it really didn't matter if you won or not, but it was really a good way for them to show outward emotion and show their abilities cognitively and stuff, which was funny because you never really think they have to use their brains that much besides like sailing and stuff. But they would play these drinking games that involved a lot more thought than you would think for a drinking game would usually need. So that one I made my modern interpretation off of. I made a stupid little video because I thought it'd be funny to insult myself in different characters and drink fake, liquor and stuff. So that I thought that was funny that they did that, and then it tied really well and made it a really easy modern interpretation. So I was happy about that. I'm just going through my sources here. The next thing that I saw was in Gisela Saga, like I talked about before, how they had this full contact game. It was pretty violent. That was the main one that I saw that was extremely violent. There was a few other that did involve like killing and stuff, but really most of them didn't. And the one in Gisela Saga that had the ball game that it was kind of weird, was not like that at all. So that's my point there. Another one that I really liked because of the show Game of Thrones was lifting, which we don't think of Game of Thrones as lifting, but the Mountain, Halfthor Bjornsson, he broke 1,000-year-old record held by a mythical, or maybe not mythical, lifter who they lifted these stones up. They lifted these gigantic stones and put them on cliffs so sailors could identify which cliff was which, and they made a game out of this, and it turned into lifting competitions, which are funny because they usually you think people like to show their strength by in the ways of battling or dueling or something, but they really just like to lift things up and move them, which is a crazy thing for them, and they just move things around. And that was funny. And then they also would lift trees because waterlogged trees could get thousands of pounds. I mean, non-waterlogged trees can get huge, but they heavy. But they lift these trees, and that's one of the records that Hafthor Bjornsson actually broke was a tree. He lifted, I forgot how much it is, but it's way, way, it's like as much as a car practically. And that was a game that they would do, and they would often do it in the free time. And the biggest, strongest men were revered, and it was amazing. The last one is the one that really proves a lot of what I was talking about, my thesis of how a lot of things were laid back. And there's a game that's called Nafetafel. It starts with an H, has a bunch of random letters in there, and it's very Scandinavian. And so Nafetafel, I don't even know, whatever. It's pretty much chess, but it's chess with a twist, and it's really actually interesting. To play it is fun. You have to think a lot, and it can turn into very heated very quickly. But the thing about it is that it was definitely the most abundant game played because they found it throughout all of Scandinavia. It was I mean it was found all the way all the way to Moscow to the east, Iceland to the west, and even Greenland to the west. Down to the Roman Empire up to the top. It was everywhere. They loved it, and it was so laid back and a relaxing game that it just doesn't make sense for Vikings. But they did it because they like to challenge their brains. And I think that was one of the bigger things that I took away is that a lot of them took it took challenge in challenging themselves. And that goes with lifting things, with playing a chess-like game, with poetic insults and stuff like that. And it kind of is the opposite of what we think about for Vikings, which I really liked. And I think that's really cool. Even if these things all came from sagas, this is where the validity point comes. If it all came from a saga, those sagas we know now, after doing a lot of reading on them, are probably fiction. A bit, most of it's fiction, a little bit nonfiction. But even though, they wrote about that, it's got to be rooted in some sort of fact, and that's where it comes, comes around where we're not 100% sure. But it's fun to think about that the Vikings, when they weren't doing all this raiding and pillaging, were sitting back playing chess and poetically insulting people while drinking mead, which I think is very ironic and very, very funny. And the research really was fun to think about because, now we do the same things. We work hard all day, we go to school all day, and when we won't come home, we want to do something that's relaxed and we want to do something that's, it challenges us, but it is also fun. So that's why we do play drinking games with our friends, and that's why we do play chess or poker or stuff like that because it's challenging, but it brings us away. It keeps us away from all the things, the main things that we do during the day, which, so there's a lot of parallels between us and them. And I really like that. And I thought the whole thing in general was super interesting. And yeah, I think it was a great topic to research, and I'm glad I did. And now I know a lot more about Vikings in general. And yeah, that's about it. So great class. Thanks, Professor Walkner. We had a great year. Yeah. Hopefully we're back next semester. See you guys.